I'd like to introduce Pete from across the pond to help us explore New Zealand. He works for Southern World, which are one of our fabulous DMCs, so our destination management consultants in country. And we've put some incredible itineraries together, working as a team with Southern World. And yeah, I'm really excited to see his presentation and hopefully to inspire you and just really blow your mind or take you back if you've been there already. I think you'll just have a fantastic trip down memory lane. And if you haven't been yet, please enjoy. So make sure you have your drinks ready and you're comfortable. And over to you, Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. Kia ora, everybody. Normally Val, who works for my company in the UK, would be doing this, but she's taking a break over the summer season, working in some holiday park somewhere. Melissa, you'll know where it is. I'm a Kiwi, but I actually live in Chicago, so I'm doing it in afternoon time here. So good evening to you guys. So this is just a little tiki tour around New Zealand. It's mainly pretty pictures and describe. So I'll try and be as informative as possible, but the pictures will mainly tell the story for you. And certainly at the end, if you've got any questions for me, I'll either tell the truth or make up some story that is a semblance of the truth anyway. So why New Zealand? Well, hopefully over the next few slides, you'll understand why New Zealand. We're a friendly bunch of people. We love the outdoors, so there's some amazing adventure, whether it be soft or a little bit more exciting, but the outdoors in New Zealand is what you want to embrace on a visit there. So it's a similar size to the UK. It's about 1,000 miles north to south. I think this slide of Val's maybe a few years old. I think, and maybe this is because all the people have come back during the pandemic, but we're around about 5 million people now. It's comfortable driving around New Zealand. You know, 5 million people in a country the size of the UK means that there's a little bit more open space. We drive on the other side, well, the same side of the road as you. I'm used to talking to Americans and Canadians. So a very easy country to get around. Obviously the other side of the world, down under, so opposite seasons, but we have a pretty mild sort of temperature range, nothing too extreme. As I said, I live in Chicago, moved here many years ago from the South Island of New Zealand, and you know, I thought I'd saw a winter when we had frosts in the morning, and of course Chicago abounds with snow and very cold temperatures in the winter. So I'm just going to sort of talk regionally about New Zealand. We'll start off in Auckland, go north, and then we'll sort of gradually head our way south throughout the country. So Auckland is the biggest city we have. Boy, it probably has about, you know, 1/5 of our total population, or maybe more. It's called the City of Sails. We are the current holder of the America's Cup, so it's a major yachting town. That is a sky tower there in the background on the right. One of the attractions that you would have as part of your itinerary when you're visiting Auckland is popping out to Waiheke Island. In the sort of 60s and 70s, it was more of a sort of a commune, and now it's some of the most pricey real estate in all of New Zealand. It's a little commuter island out on the Hauraki Gulf, just outside of Auckland, now full of vineyards and olive groves and multi-million-dollar houses. But it's a perfect little day tour, or maybe even a 2 or 3 night stay on a visit on arrival into New Zealand, but definitely worth the day tour. North of Auckland is our region called the Bay of Islands up in Northland. This is sort of our winterless north. Great for marlin fishing, swimming with dolphins. It's just a very picturesque part of New Zealand at the very top end. Lots of Maori culture up there. It's where the Treaty of Waitangi was signed, and lots of beautiful kauri forests, those magnificent trees that you can see there to the right, and of course the fern-filled forests as well. Just south of Auckland is the Coromandel Peninsula, home to Cathedral Cove that you can see there on the right. Lots of beautiful walking paths, lots of holiday home areas there, particularly well known for Hot Water Beach. This is a little phenomena we have in the Coromandel Peninsula. You've got the Pacific Ocean there, literally steps away, and you can dig a great big hole in the sand and up comes thermal water. So hot thermal water, you know, within steps away from the Pacific Ocean. Not too far from there, just a little bit to the west, driving south from Auckland, is the area of Waitomo. And this is where we have our glowworm caves. The old days, there was really just one way of accessing the Waitomo glowworm caves, and that was by small rafts or canoes. Now you can walk into the caves, you can abseil into the caves. They have blackwater rafting that you can do through the caves. So there's lots of different activities that you can utilize to see this interesting phenomena with these glowworms. And of course, in this general area is where the main movie set for both the Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit was filmed, and that's something you can experience driving south from Auckland. So there's a nice little video here that sort of describes the Hobbiton tour. So there is actually a pub there. It's called the Green Dragon. So when you visit Hobbiton, you can go and have a pint of their locally brewed beer, and have a Hobbit meal, which of course, as you probably know, the Hobbits eat a lot. So that's there are very few actual movie sets anywhere in the world that remain after a movie is shot. Indeed, the majority of the Hobbit scenes was filmed on Crown land in New Zealand. Edoras, the castle, was built on Crown land in the South Island, and completely dismantled and brought back to its natural state after the movie was done. So this whole set is privately owned farmland, and with the blessings of the owners of the movie, they allowed the film set to remain, and you can visit. It's quite a fun thing to do. Just south of there again is Rotorua, and this is known as a thermal or geothermal wonderland, and it's also a place where you can embrace and find out all about the Māori culture. So lots of opportunities to engage with the ecothermal parks and indeed the Māori culture, whether it be attending a hangi, going through the whole pōwhiri, and engaging firsthand with Māori culture. Just heading south again is the Lake Taupo region. That's where the famous Hooker Lodge, New Zealand's sort of grand dam of luxury lodges, is. The Māori culture there in front of you with the stone carving into the cliff face of Lake Taupo, New Zealand's largest lake, and also home to some of the best fly fishing and trout fishing in all of New Zealand, although there are other regions, the top of the South Island and in and around Queenstown, where you can engage in that as well. Just a little bit to the east of Taupo is the Napier Hawke's Bay area. This is famous for Art Deco. So the whole city was felled by fire and earthquakes in the late 20s, I believe, and the town was completely rebuilt in that area, which was, of course, was the Art Deco area. So quite a stunningly beautiful coastal town, also known for its wonderful food and wine and the vineyards of the region. Whereas the top of the South Island is more known for its Sauvignon Blancs. Here, the wine of the region is either Chardonnay or Merlot. And then the other major wine growing regions in the center of the North Island, or in the Queenstown, Central Otago area, very areas for Pinot Noir grapevines. Our capital, of course, is Wellington, at the very bottom of the North Island of New Zealand. The political capital. It also has a very, very stunning museum that we call Te Papa. It's our national museum. There are other museums spread out through New Zealand, but this is the national museum. If any of you have been to Washington, DC, and been to the Newseum, it's very similar to that. It's very interactive, very hands-on, and has some very, very stunning displays. So very much worth a visit to Te Papa. Another really, really cool thing to go and see while you're in Wellington, I don't have a shot of it, is the Weta, which is where all the filming development for Lord of the Rings, James Cameron movies, The Hobbit, all those sorts of movies were developed, and all the extra stuff that was done, it was done at the Weta. So if you have an opportunity to do a behind the scenes tour, if you're touring through Wellington, that's well worth the price of admission. Wellington's a little bit like Melbourne is to Australia. It's got a huge foodie coffee culture, great bars, just a little bit obviously smaller than Melbourne. But if you're into food and wine, I'm not sure whether you guys in the UK get the paranormal movies that were done, but they were all filmed in Wellington as well. So it's quite a fun city to visit. So the way to leisurely get across the Cook Strait is to take the Inter-Island ferry. You can take it just as a passenger. They do take vehicles on board, but generally what happens now with motorhomes or rental cars is you leave one vehicle at Wellington and you pick up a new one in Picton. As you can see there, the ferry ride is just a very pleasant 3-hour journey. Where you land in Picton is the starting point to the Blenheim and Marlborough area, where the majority of our Sauvignon Blanc grapes are grown, produced. So ample opportunity there to sample some of New Zealand's best wine growing areas. And just across the top of the South Island to the Neilson area, which is home of the Abel Tasman National Park. Great for sea kayaking and doing a 3 or 4 day walk on the Abel Tasman National Park. You can do a single day walk as well, but just stunning beauty. If we head back down the east coast of the South Island, we're going to head into Kaikoura. And this was the epicenter of the big earthquakes that we've had there over the last few years, and it's kind of transformed the coastline, but it's done nothing to affect the dolphins, the Hector dolphins, and the whale watching that you can do in this region. And I always, when I see shots like the one on the left there of the whale going under, it's the New Zealand version of taking a photo of an elephant with Kilimanjaro in the background. You've got whales diving and rising, and then you've got in the background the Southern Alps of New Zealand, which rise to about 12,000 feet. So it's sort of our version of that African photographic experience. My home city, I just grew up south of Christchurch, and of course I've just mentioned the earthquake. This is the rebuild of Christchurch. It's very now much a low-rise city, and if any of you have seen a typical shot of Christchurch, you would have seen Christchurch Cathedral, and that obviously had major damage during the earthquake, and they are now doing a very slow rebuild of this beautiful building. But in the meantime, the photograph on the right is what we call the cardboard cathedral. So this is a cathedral for that parish now. It's made out of about 98 cardboard tubes. It's the same size as the original, or holds the same capacity as the original cathedral. And it's at the site of another Anglican church that was literally within about a quarter of a mile of the original cathedral. So it's designed to last about 50 years. So it was going to take the place of the cathedral until the rebuild was done. But yeah, if you've ever wanted to see something quite spectacular built out of cardboard, there's your opportunity in Christchurch. One of the, I think, most spectacular day train rides anywhere in the world is the Transalpine Express, either from east to west or west to east. It goes from Christchurch across to Greymouth and back again in the same day. I think the best way to do the journey is to go from the Canterbury Plains, from Christchurch, through the mountain ranges and end up in the rainforest, which is the west coast. But you can do it as a day trip, going in both directions, or as a one-way and pick up a rental car at the other end. But a really spectacular train ride. And so the West Coast, for you guys, it sort of would be reminiscent of, you know, the East Coast of the UK, whether it be England or Ireland or Scotland. It's that rugged coastline, lots of shipwrecks from ships coming in from with the prevailing weather from Australia. Really spectacular. Lots of rainforest areas. And you've also got the glaciers. So the glaciers make it even more spectacular because you've got the Southern Alps, you know, going through the center of New Zealand from almost from north to south of the South Island. And the glaciers are on, the majority of the glaciers are on the West Coast. So you're going from sort of 12,000 feet down through a glacier into a rainforest area to a major ocean. And that just doesn't happen in the world. So these are pretty spectacular. Not as big as the Athabasca glaciers or anything like that, but going from a mountain range and down to a rainforest is quite something different. You can take a helicopter ride up to land at the top of a glacier. Just before the pandemic, one of our suppliers had actually offered an overnight stay on a glacier. So it'll be interesting to see if that returns post-pandemic. And then as you cross back over the ranges, you come into sort of our Southern Lakes area, whether that be Tekapo or Aviemore or Benmore or Lake Wanaka, or where you'll more than likely end up into Queenstown. And this is, I think, the most spectacular sort of small town, because it's not really a city that we have in New Zealand. It's got those mountain ranges, what they call the Remarkables there in the background. So several ski fields within that region. It's like Aspen in the USA on a major lake, but unlike Aspen, it's not just an alpine village for the ski season. It's a fun town to visit, obviously during our summer as well. There's lots of summer activities, whether it's bungee jumping or jet boating, or we call it the adrenaline capital of the world, or the adventure capital of the world, and has plenty for visitors to see and partake in, whether it be bungee jumping or parapenting, as I say, jet boating. Some stunning vineyards in that area as well. And then, of course, you are right on, oh, there we go. That's probably one of the most spectacular things that you can do in the Queenstown region is skydive over our major, amazing alpine area. Just at the top of the lake is a place called Glenorchy. I put that down because I'm not sure whether you guys got the TV series Top of the Lake. But that was set in at that region, as was a lot of the filming for The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, done in the top end of Lake Wakatip in Queenstown. As I say, it's the leading off place to go over to our Fiordland National Park, over to Milford, and spend a day at Milford, or do an overnight cruise on Milford or Doubtful. We've got a little short video on Milford Sound here as well. So there's the two fjords we have are Milford Sound and Doubtful Sound, and Milford's more well known. It's a little bit busier than Doubtful, and that's why I kind of like Doubtful as an overnight tour. There's only one overnight boat on Doubtful. There are a couple on Milford, and a little bit less traffic, a little bit different way to get to Doubtful. But there are two opportunities to see our fjords in that region. And then if we head back up into the center of the South Island, this is at the beginning of the Lake District, where Mount Cook, and that's up at the top of Tekapo, or this, yeah, this is taken from Lake Tekapo. That's our highest peak, 12,000 feet. Now, I mentioned Lake Tekapo. It's a spectacular area to see the night sky. So there is a small, it's called mountain. You can run up it. It's not that high, but it's called Mount John. And it was an observatory that the US government leased off the New Zealand government for a number of years. And they had a spy satellite tracking station up there. And when the lease expired, it's got to be probably 25 years ago now, the US government donated all the equipment, all the telescopic equipment, to the University of Texas, a university in Tokyo, and to Canterbury University in Christchurch. And so it's now like a night sky museum. There's a little town of Tekapo right at the base of the of Mount John, and they capped all their street lights. So so there is no unnatural light in that whole area. So the night sky is just absolutely amazing. And to see the Southern Cross from the using all this amazing satellite and telescopic whatever they've got up there is quite something. So to go up there at about, depending on the time of the year, you know, in the evening hours is a real cool experience. So if you want an absolutely spectacular night sky experience, and with people that can actually tell you what you're seeing, that's the place to see it. Probably the most UK, and we call it our Scottish city, would be Dunedin. It's got a real, you know, sort of castle look to it. The university buildings, that's Larnac Castle to the left, the Botanic Gardens there to the right. It's a stunningly beautiful city. It's on the south end of the east coast of New Zealand. It's also home to penguin colonies, an albatross colony, great brewery called Spates down there as well, well worth a visit. But yeah, that's a nice place to sort of end up the presentation on New Zealand. And from there we say haere rā and thank you, and the traditional hongi, the rubbing of the noses. So there we go. Thank you all. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
That was great, Pete. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great presentation, great photos, and New Zealand really has it all. Mountains, trains, whales, and wine. A lot of wine. A lot of wine.
A lot of wine.
A lot of vineyards.
Yes.
Yeah, I had quite a few questions on them actually through, which is good. So I don't know if anyone else thinks of any questions while I'm talking, then please feel free to type in the chat or unmute and jump in. Just on the wine, do you know, are there many or any vineyards that you can stay at so that you can do wine tasting and stay there?
Yes, there is. There is a really good one in the Hawke's Bay, and it's actually my wife's favorite wine, favorite Sauvignon Blanc, but they do a really good Pinot as well, and it's called Craggy Range.
Okay.
So CRAGGYRANGE. There are some in the Marlborough region. I'm trying to think. There is definitely one in Queenstown that is brand new. I'll get Val to let you know exactly what that is. I can't
Yeah. No, that'd be great.
But yeah, no, there are several opportunities in New Zealand to stay at a vineyard. Craggy Range would be my favorite.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. You mentioned from Neilson and around the Abel Tasman National Park. Are there any tours that you're able to offer to put together in order to explore them, or do people generally head off by themselves or in couples?
You can freedom walk in New Zealand. There are many opportunities where you can freedom walk, but no, the majority of the people that we look after, we put on prearranged walking tours, whether they be single day or multi-day. But there's on the Abel Tasman National Park, you can do a 1, 2, or 3 and 4 day walk, staying at various lodges along the way. Your walking can be, your transportation can be by boat, by kayak between some of them, walking, coastal walking. When you get down to the, Queenstown area, there are many different walks you can do. The Greenstone, Milford Track, Hollyford. Hollyford's a really cool walk. That's a 3-day walk. And the really cool thing about it, it's a valley walk rather than an alpine walk. So it's a lot easier. But within the walk, because when you go to New Zealand, the things that you want to do in that region is you want to take a helicopter flight to see the area from above. So spectacular. You want to do a jet boat, and you want to walk some of the trails, and the Hollyford encompasses all three. So that's a really cool way to experience an amazing part of New Zealand. But yeah, we work with any number of different suppliers that do single or multi-day walks throughout the country.
That's great, because it's such a stunning area, and it just feels so untouched when you're there as well. So it's
and one of the reasons, look, obviously I grew up there and I did a lot of freedom walking, but when you're doing it on your own, you don't understand the historical nature of the walk. Quite often there's cultural significance. As I've got older, I have more of an interest in plants. Well, I don't know what the plants were when I was walking them. So you have guides that tell you all those sort of nuances about. So yeah, doing it with either on your own with a guide or with a small group is definitely the best way to do it.
Yeah, you just get so much more out of it as well, don't you? So
correct.
That's brilliant. And as you mentioned, culture as well. I've been asked, what would you say is the best way to learn about the Maori culture whilst you're there? You mentioned Rotorua, but are there any other places or ways that you'd say were?
Yeah, look, you definitely want, there's a few different ways to engage in the culture, and definitely Rotorua is brilliant. There's a place there called Tapuia, which is very similar to the one that I showed on Val's presentation. So there's any number of ways that you can engage there, either dining, having, carving school. You can even get a Maori tattoo at Tapuia. There is a place in Napier where you can go foraging for food with and dine. So catching fish and things like that, and engaging that way. One of the most amazing things to do, I mentioned Te Papa, the museum in Wellington. They have about 95% of all the historical Māori, carvings, Kiwi cloaks, weaponry, all these things they have brought back from all over the world, and it's kept at Te Papa. and you can do a behind the scenes with the curators of this. It's a very small, minute group of people who've ever seen this collection. It is spectacular. It's bone tingling, because you're seeing things that, you know, basically 90% of New Zealanders have never seen. So, and it's been, you know, collectors, you know, from the UK that have, you know, sent it back to New Zealand because they, you know, it's come through a family member and has no meaning or significance to them, so they've gifted it back to the Māori people of New Zealand. It's spectacular.
That's incredible. And yeah, I'm kind of, in a way, not too surprised that there probably are a lot of people who live there that haven't seen it, as the same here. You know, there are lots of just incredibly impressive things and artifacts that have come back from all over the world that you just need to be in awe of, really. So Janice, I'll be asking you if you've been there and you've seen them, just to note. And okay, so a couple of last questions. Is there a secret place or a less visited or less popular place that you think people should experience, but they don't generally go, not necessarily really high up on their lists? Like, what's your favorite, your little nugget?
Oh, my favorite little spot in New Zealand is a little town called Akaroa. And it's on the Banks Peninsula, just outside of Christchurch, and you can go and swim with the dolphins there. But it's the French thought that they had discovered New Zealand, and they pulled into this little area called Akaroa. And so the streets in this little settlement are, what do they call them? Rues, is that right? A street in France, a rue, yeah. I think. Anyway, whatever the name of a street is in France, that's what they are. So it's this peculiar little town on the Banks Peninsula. It's about a 45-minute drive from Christchurch. It's got great little B&Bs and it's got the best fish and chip shop in New Zealand. Yeah, that was a favorite of my mum and dad's. My dad had his 80th birthday there. But yeah, so there you go. That's kind of my little hidden jewel.
Yeah, that's your special place. Great. Okay, and I have one. Okay, so one of them is where are the most impressive beaches?
There's a beach called 90 Mile Beach at the very top of New Zealand that you actually drive on to get to Cape Reinga. That's a pretty spectacular beach. So buses will drive you up. You can go sand tobogganing down the hills there. Hot Water Beach is pretty cool, which is that one I showed you in the Coromandel.
Yeah.
And then there's a really nice beach just south of Mount Maunganui, which is near the coastal town of Tauranga. So a little bit west of, east of Rotorua. See, the weird thing about New Zealand is that we have black sandy beaches and we have white sandy beaches. You know, there are some really cool beaches that you go there for surfing. So if you weren't going to hop on the water, because, you know, if you're not a surfer, because there's some amazing riptides there, but the surf is amazing. So yeah, it depends what you're into for, you know, is it a picturesque beach or is it a spectacular surfing beach or, yeah.
Full variety. Anyway, I think it was the one.
So there is almost as much coastline in New Zealand as the United States. So there is a ton of coastline. So there's a ton of beaches everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was Mount Maunganui near there that I learnt to surf, actually. So yes, I know it's quite wild there. Okay, and my last question might not be of interest to everyone, but it's about Mount Cook. Is it a mountain that you can go up? Is it a sacred mountain, or is it possible to summit?
It's a very, very difficult mountain to climb. Yeah, it's a lot of New Zealand alpine mountain ranges are very difficult to climb, and you need to be a very experienced alpine climber. I mean, there are walks up the mountain to a certain area, but to get to the peak of Mount Cook, incredibly difficult. But there are trails that you can take to certain points.
Yeah. Okay, great. And I've just had another one come in about hiring mobile homes and or camper vans and touring New Zealand. Is that still, would you say, is that one of the most popular ways of getting around? Or I know you mentioned about hiring cars and getting around. I just wondered how you'd found it, which would be most popular.
We do a lot of motorhome rentals. Not so much from this market, from the US market. Canadians, people from the UK, Australians, people that are a little bit more comfortable and got a little bit more time to spend. But yeah, it's a very, very popular way to travel around New Zealand. So there are multiple motor camps, very modern, that you can stay at. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that comes back. When all the borders open. I actually think it'll come back bigger than before. I think there'll be, I know a lot of Kiwis and Aussies, because our borders are open, are out there exploring in motorhomes, something that they may not have done in the past. So it'll be interesting to see how that builds up again. But we actually do quite a few motorhome convoys as well. So people will, there'll be 20 motorhomes traveling around New Zealand, all as a group.
That's quite cool. I bet that's quite a sight to behold.
Yeah.
And okay, so now the last question that's just come in is about the wildlife there. How would you say that it's best to try and learn about how the unique wildlife is conserved, especially the ground birds and conservation?
So we have a different, we're completely different than looking at Australia for wildlife. The majority of our wildlife is bird life. So the things that you would want to do is to try and go and see kiwis in the wild. And we work with a number of operators. There's one particularly in Auckland that you can do. Go to the the name of it escapes me now, but there is a hatchery in Rotorua that you would want to go and see and experience the breeding of kiwis. There is a really nice operation in Wellington that is a wildlife sanctuary. Do either the penguin colony in Dunedin, or there's a really cool little penguin colony in Oamaru, which is just north of Dunedin. But yeah, there's lots of opportunities with suppliers that we work with that you can go and experience the wildlife in the wild. But as I say, we don't have, other than things like tuataras, we don't have echidnas and well, we do have wallabies that somehow got there from Australia, but not kangaroos, koalas and echidnas and things like that. The majority of our wildlife is either sea life or birds, but there's definite opportunities throughout the country to experience them in the wild.
Yeah, and quite a few different locations for the for where you can go to learn about them anyway, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, and interestingly, a number, I've had a few slides of dolphins. There are different species of dolphins all over New Zealand, peculiar to parts of, as well as penguins. The penguins that you would see in Fiordland are going to be different than the penguins that you'll see in Oamaru. So, yeah.
So definitely worth seeing as much as you can of the whole country and be there as long as you can possibly be there.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I think that is it for questions that I have, but if anyone thinks of any after we finish for this evening, or you want to ring me up and just chat to me about New Zealand, then my ears are always open and my favourite topic, so please do. Once again, obviously appreciate any feedback for this evening. And I've just really enjoyed this evening. I've loved going through each area and the the specifics of New Zealand. And I hope that everyone else has enjoyed it just as much as I have. So thank you very much, Pete, for your presentation this evening and answering quite a lot of questions. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for joining on this final travel taster for this series. And hopefully we will be back in the autumn. I will stay in touch, obviously. I hope that you're all on. If you are on Facebook, then great. If you are on there, then have a look for the Festival of Travel page on my Facebook page, and I'm posting things on there that are relevant if and when I come up with the next series. It might be slightly different, it might be a bit of a different format. So yeah, a bit of watch this space, and as I say, any feedback is gratefully received. I'm just trying to think of new ideas for inspiration and for just helping you have thoughts for travel for the future. And of course, if you are thinking of planning at any point for however far in the future, then I'd be delighted to have a chat with you and go through some options. And I'm very excited about the world reopening again at some point in hopefully the not too distant future. So yeah, thank you very much to all of you, and thank you again, Pete. And yeah, I will see you all soon. Take care and stay in touch.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks.
Thank you.